Hello there, wake up. It's Means Morning News. Just after 11 a.m. on the East Coast, and I'm Sam Sachs. I've been plugged in all night, so my battery is at 100%. Let's do the dang news. For the past 12 days now, Israel has maintained a total blockade on Gaza in violation of the ceasefire agreed to at the start of the year. Israel has also cut off electricity and water into the enclave, expanding its collective punishment against Palestinians and implicating itself further in crimes against humanity. Whatever meager aid that was allowed into Gaza during the first few weeks of the ceasefire is now running out, and the hellish conditions that existed before it are returning, including Israeli military attacks. 4 Palestinians were killed in Gaza on Tuesday in an airstrike. In response to Israel's refusal to abide by the ceasefire, the Houthi government in Yemen announced it would resume its naval actions targeting Israeli ships and merchant vessels headed to Israel. A spokesperson for the government said on television, quote, "This blockade will continue until the crossings to the Gaza Strip are reopened and humanitarian aid, including food and medicine, is allowed to enter." Meanwhile, in New York City, legal proceedings began over the Trump administration's attempts to deport a permanent U.S. resident for protesting against that war in Gaza. Lawyers for Mahmoud Khalil told a judge that they haven't been able to consult with their client at all since he was arrested and transferred to a detention facility in Louisiana. They did say they had only one phone call with Khalil, but it was cut short and it wasn't privileged, as in the government was listening in. Federal Judge Jesse Furman ordered the government to allow Khalil to make 2 calls to his lawyers and to respect attorney-client privilege on those calls. And Dropsite News reported that after the hearing, Khalil was finally able to consult with his legal team. More arguments will take place in the coming days over Khalil's arrest. His lawyers are trying to get him released from detention, while the government is arguing that the hearing should be relocated to a different courtroom in New Jersey. Outside the courtroom in New York, a lawyer for Khalil read a statement from Khalil's wife, who's an American citizen and is being forced to deal with all of this while she's 8 months pregnant.
My husband was kidnapped from our home, and it's shameful that the United States government continues to hold him because he stood for the rights and lives of his people. I demand his immediate release and return to our family. His disappearance has devastated our lives. Every day without him is filled with uncertainty, not just for me, but for our entire family and community. Our loved ones are struggling with the pain and fear of his sudden absence. And yet, we are not alone. So many who know and love Mahmoud have come together, refusing to stay silent. Their support is a testament to his character and to the deep injustice of what is being done to him.
Now, as all that was going on, President Trump was in the Oval Office meeting with the Irish Prime Minister and taking questions from reporters, and he managed to be both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic at the same time, while attacking Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Take a look.
People are going to blame the Democrats, and Schumer is a Palestinian as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian.
Yeah, not sure I trust this White House to rein in Israel's genocidal war against Gaza when the president thinks he can use Palestinian as an insult. And I'll just conclude by saying that, as a Jewish person, I believe that Israel carrying out an ethnic cleansing campaign in the name of my religion, and the President of the United States and his reactionary allies feeling like they can determine who is and isn't a real Jew based on their subservience to the administration's agenda, I find that to be way more threatening than any student protesting for Palestine on college campuses. The real anti-Semitism is coming from inside the dang White House. President Trump and Elon Musk have so severely weakened the Federal Trade Commission that it can no longer effectively prosecute big tech companies that screw us over. On Wednesday, a lawyer for the FTC asked a judge to delay an upcoming trial against Amazon due to staffing and budgetary constraints created by Musk's so-called Department of Government Efficiency. During a status hearing, FTC lawyer Jonathan Cohen told the judge, quote, "Our resource constraints are severe and really unique to this moment. We have lost employees in the agency, in our division, and on the case team." Cohen cited Musk's fork in the road email, which encouraged government workers to resign, as a reason why the agency is short-staffed. It's also hampered by the hiring freeze the president imposed across the federal government. The case against Amazon was brought by former FTC Chair Lina Khan during the Biden presidency. The tech behemoth is accused of deceptive practices by enrolling people into its Prime program without their consent, charging them, and then making it difficult for them to cancel those subscriptions. Amazon has worked hard to curry favor with the new Trump administration. Founder Jeff Bezos gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration committee and got a seat on stage during the ceremony, right alongside other tech oligarchs who also made sizable donations. Also, Amazon agreed to start streaming the TV show that made Trump so popular before his run for president, The Apprentice, and it agreed to produce a documentary on First Lady Melania Trump. In his first days in office, President Trump fired Khan, shutting down her aggressive pursuit of big corporations. Now, later on Wednesday, in a bizarre turn of events after this story broke in the media, the FTC completely reversed itself in the Amazon case and told the judge that it's no longer seeking a delay and that it does actually have enough resources to continue on with the trial. That same lawyer who hours earlier said the FTC had severe resource constraints then claimed in a letter to the judge, quote, "The commission does not have resource constraints, and we are fully prepared to litigate this case." Well, that's weird. Did you guys find some extra cash and lawyers in the couch cushions at the FTC? What's really going on here is the agency, under the leadership now of Trump ally Andrew Ferguson, is trying to save face and not make it too obvious that it's completely abandoned its aggressive posture toward big tech. Instead, it will just go through the motions and throw the case. Troubles at the FTC reflect what DOJ's true goal is here, not to cut government waste and fraud, but to cripple the government, leaving it too weak to actually confront corporate power. The U.S. Department of Agriculture announced it was canceling a program that provided funding to schools and food banks to source their food locally. USDA officials notified states to brace for the funding loss. The Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement Program provided $660 million to states to then distribute to schools and child care facilities to buy food from local farms and ranchers, instead of having to rely on major food corporations that offer less nutritious options. More than 40 states participated in the program. A second initiative, known as the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program, which helped food banks buy locally, will also be canceled. Together, the two programs provided $1 billion to states to boost demand for local food production. A spokesperson for the department told Politico, quote, "These programs, created under the former administration via executive authority, no longer effectuate the goals of the agency." Well, then one has to wonder what exactly the goals of the agency are, because locally grown food is often healthier, it adds reliability and stability to the nation's food system, and it's better for the environment. Now, this is obviously something that undermines Trump's so-called Make America Healthy Again pledge, assuming anyone actually believed that garbage. I know none of you watching at home did. Still, though, someone should notify Robert Kennedy Jr. about this. Although, He's currently busy cutting ads for Steak and Shake on Fox News and claiming that beef tallow fries cure measles or whatever. The government agencies that protect people's rights are being dismantled one by one. The Department of Education is laying off more than 1,300 workers. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said that the mass firings are part of her mission, assigned by President Trump, to ultimately shut down the department altogether. For now, it's the department's Office of Civil Rights which is getting decimated by these layoffs. The office is facing steep cuts, and regional centers that investigate civil rights violations at schools have been shuttered completely or reduced to skeleton crews. During her confirmation hearing, McMahon was asked how the government would investigate and remedy civil rights violations at schools if the department was eliminated. And she suggested that that stuff could just be moved over to the Department of Justice instead. Of course, one of the first actions taken by President Trump was to freeze all DOJ civil rights investigations, too. The Education Department also manages the government's student loan portfolio. If it's eliminated, you'll still have to pay back your loans, though. The White House has discussed moving its student loan operations to the Treasury Department instead. Meanwhile, at the EPA, Administrator Lee Zeldin announced the closure of all its environmental justice offices. This is from the New York Times. Quote, Mr. Zeldin's move effectively ends 3 decades of work at the EPA to try to ease the pollution that burdens poor and minority communities, which are frequently located near highways, power plants, industrial plants, and other polluting facilities. Studies have shown that people who live in those communities have higher rates of asthma, heart disease, and other health problems compared with the national average. Zeldin referred to environmental justice initiatives as, quote, forced discrimination programs. Forced discrimination programs. Discrimination against who, Lee? Can you clarify that for me? Because these are offices that address poor and minority communities that are disproportionately harmed by polluting corporations. So they're the opposite of forced discrimination. Zeldin's comments, though, only make sense in the perverse minds of conservatives who view any program that helps exploited minorities as a form of woke or DEI, which to them is inherently discriminatory against white people. As though the government is relocating people out of Cancer Alley and forcing families in the suburbs of Indiana to move there instead. Although that might not be a bad idea in some cases. Besides, no one is safe from environmental degradation with Zeldin in charge. The EPA administrator also announced that the agency was repealing dozens of regulations aimed at keeping the nation's air and water clean, including limits on soot from smokestacks, mercury emissions, and car tailpipe pollution, also protections for wetlands, and the agency's determination that it can regulate greenhouse gases.
Today, I'm pleased to make the largest deregulatory announcement in U.S. history. Today, the Green New Scam ends as the EPA does its part to usher in the golden age of American success. Our actions will lower the cost of living by making it more affordable to purchase a car, heat your home, and operate a business.
Yeah, it actually won't reduce the cost of any of that stuff, because even if polluting corporations save money by not having to abide by regulations, they won't pass those savings on to customers. They'll just go to executives and shareholders. But even if it is true and people see their energy bills lowered by a couple bucks, I don't think the trade-off, which is being unable to breathe the air or drink the water because it's toxic now, I don't think that trade-off is worth it. For this week in working class history, we're spinning it back to 1912 for the conclusion of the Bread and Roses strike. It's one of the more significant labor actions in U.S. history, when a mostly female workforce of weavers of different nationalities united together to bring the textile mill owners in Lawrence, Massachusetts, to their knees. Discontent had long been simmering among the workers, who had to deal with poor wages and dangerous working conditions, but it all boiled over when the mill owners cut the weavers' weekly take-home pay in response to a new law that reduced the work week from 56 hours to 54 hours. It all started in January. First, it was Polish workers at the Everett Cotton Mills who noticed the reduced wages. They left their machines and went on strike, and went on to recruit tens of thousands of other mill workers who also had their pay cut. The Weavers Union, the United Textile Workers, was too moderate, not up for the moment, so the more radical IWW took the reins of leading the strike. The union formed a strike committee composed of workers of varying ethnicities to reflect the diversity of the strikers, and divisions were created to supply workers with medical care and food during the duration of the strike. The state crackdown was brutal, though. The police and militia attacked strikers, killing 2 of them. But the violent repression, which was often directed at women and their children, engendered sympathy among the public and elected politicians, including President William Taft. And that support brought pressure on the mill owners to resolve the labor dispute. Ultimately, this week that year, they started caving. First, it was the American Woolen Company, which agreed to all the workers' demands, including a 15% wage increase, double pay for overtime, and a promise to not punish workers who went on strike. By the end of the month, other factories in Lawrence came to an agreement with their weavers to end the strike, and mills across New England improved wages and hours for their workers too, in response to the strike. Thanks as always to the team at Working Class History for giving us access to their archives. Follow them on social media at Working Class History to learn more about the Bread and Roses strike and other events that happened this week in history, including the death of Karl Marx in 1883, the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II in 1917, and the 1951 Barcelona general strike. We'll be back with more next week. Okay, friends, the show ends today with a sunrise from Oregon. It was sent in by Powell in Portland on indigenous Cayuse, Umatilla, and Walla Walla land. Enjoy. Thank you, Powell. Show's over. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the team behind the scenes. Please sign up for Means TV and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channels, and follow us on social media. One day, capitalism will fall, but until then, we're going to be right here. See you tomorrow.